I suggested my mother-in-law rearrange the refrigerator to make her more comfortable. An hour later, I was called a sexist. And a week later, we watched her interview about moral humiliation in the family. I merely suggested that my mother-in-law rearrange the jar of sauce in the refrigerator. An hour later, I was accused of sexism, and a week later, she was talking about moral humiliation in the family on live TV. It wasn't a conflict. It was a war for the refrigerator, and I became her main enemy. I swear I didn't walk in there planning to start a war over condiments. But somehow, in the span of 60 minutes, I went from being the helpful son-in-law who offered to reorganize a fridge to being accused of moral humiliation on a public live stream. You think I'm exaggerating? I wish I was. It started like this. My wife, Anna, 31F, and I, Jake, 33M, had invited her mom, Marianne, 58F, to stay with us for a few weeks while her house got fumigated. She's always been intense. Former philosophy professor, current YouTube armchair sociologist, part-time crystal enthusiast. She uses phrases like emotional labor and hierarchies of oppression in everyday conversation. You get the vibe. I've always tried to keep things chill with her. Nod politely. Let her ramble about the patriarchy embedded in Tupperware lids. Whatever keeps the peace. Anna's more neutral, loves her mom, but has learned to tune out the dramatic monologues. Still, 3 days into her stay, tensions were rising. The fridge was the battlefield. Now our kitchen is small. We've got a normal fridge, not one of those double-wide suburban monoliths. And Marianne brought an entire tote bag of her own groceries, stuff like sea moss gel, raw goat kefir, and these weird pickled lotus roots that smell like wet pennies. She'd crammed them in on the top shelf, shoved our stuff around, and now nothing made sense. Eggs behind the kimchi, milk sideways, salsa sitting on top of the oat milk carton like a sad little king. So I said, as gently as I could, "Hey Marianne, do you want me to help rearrange the fridge? Just to make everything easier to reach?" She blinked at me like I'd slapped her. "Why?" she asked, voice already sharp. "Because I'm old? Or because you think I don't know how to organize?" I stammered, No, it's kind of packed. And I thought maybe we could make space together." She crossed her arms and said, "That's such a male thing to say." I blinked. "Sorry? You're implying that I, a woman with 30 years of professional experience, need you to teach me fridge management? That's textbook gendered condescension." Anna, bless her, tried to step in. "Mom, I don't think Jake meant anything like that. It's just kind of tight in there and—" "Oh no," Marianne interrupted. "Let's unpack this. This is what I call micro-domestic misogyny. You think I haven't lived with a refrigerator before? That I don't know how to balance temperature zones?" At this point, I genuinely thought she was joking. I even laughed. "Big mistake." Her eyes went full scorched earth. "You're laughing because you're uncomfortable with being called out." And then she walked out. Just like that. 30 seconds later, I heard her in the guest room, on speakerphone with her sister, saying something about hostile domestic environments and epistemic invalidation. I went to bed thinking, okay, weird fight, she'll cool off. She did not. A week later, someone from work sent me a link to a local women's podcast live stream. Marianne was the guest. The episode was titled Moral Humiliation in the Family, When the Fridge Becomes a Battlefield. And yeah, she told the whole story. Twisted, of course. Claimed I cornered her in the kitchen to exert refrigerator control and silence her intuitive food arrangement. Anna was mortified. I was stunned. But that was just the beginning. So, after the podcast fiasco, you'd think maybe Marianne would cool off, right? That she'd gotten it out of her system, had her little rant, and we could all pretend it never happened? Nope. She doubled down. The very next morning, I came downstairs to find our fridge completely reorganized. And I don't mean just cleaned, I mean transformed. My oat milk was gone. My eggs were labeled privileged protein. She'd printed out actual stickers and relabeled all our shelves. Meat-centric zone, carbon-heavy condiments, colonial grains. I opened the freezer and there was a sticky note inside that just said, "Cold patriarchy." You think I'm kidding? I am not. I asked Anna what we were supposed to do and she just sighed, rubbed her temples and said, "Just write it out. She'll leave in 2 weeks." That was her mantra. Write it out. But Marianne didn't just leave it at the fridge. Oh no. She made it her mission to correct the moral architecture of our home. She started doing things like rearranging our bookshelf so all the female authors were on top, and the male authors were upside down to symbolize the inversion of power, setting alarms to play a Tibetan gong at sunrise for energetic cleansing, insisting on leading a nightly decolonized dinner reflection where we had to say something non-Eurocentric we were grateful for. I'm not proud of it, but I started avoiding the house. I'd go to the gym twice a day, take my laptop to cafes I hate. Hell, I even volunteered to dog sit for our neighbor's French bulldog just to get out. Meanwhile, Anna was stuck in the middle, tiptoeing through her own kitchen like it was a minefield. The real tension, though, came one night during dinner. Marianne made some kind of fermented chickpea stew that smelled like wet cardboard. I took one bite and just couldn't. I politely pushed it aside and said, "I think my stomach's a little off. Sorry." She stared me down like I'd insulted her entire lineage. "I see," she said. "Your stomach only reacts when women cook?" "What? No, It's cultural conditioning. You're trained to crave meat and blandness. You're rejecting ancestral nourishment because it threatens your gender identity." Anna nearly choked on her water. I just sat there, stunned. And then she smiled. A sweet, terrifying, gotcha smile. "But that's okay," she said. "We'll keep working on it." I swear I went to bed that night Googling emergency Airbnbs near me. That would have been bad enough. But the next day, the podcast went viral. Turns out Marianne had clipped the fridge story into a 90-second TikTok, and it blew up. Half the comments were people calling me a domestic abuser in disguise. Others said I was a gaslighting narcissist who used spatial logic to maintain control. And then someone doxed me. My LinkedIn got spammed. Some rando emailed my boss with the clip. My inbox filled with messages calling me things like the thermostat tyrant. Anna tried to stay neutral, but the tension was radioactive. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about a fridge. This was a full-blown moral crusade. And I was the villain. I didn't even know you could get canceled by your mother-in-law. Not until a Sunday morning when I walked into our local community center, innocently to pick up a donation box Anna had left there, and saw my face on a goddamn flyer. Let me back up. After the fridge TikTok debacle, I figured Marianne had peaked. The internet forgets fast. But not her. She thrives on slow-burning martyrdom. And she'd found her audience, middle-aged progressive Facebook groups who now treated her like a domestic liberation guru. They called her the kitchen theorist. Someone started a fan page. She started selling downloadable fridge labels. I wish I were kidding. Then came the workshop. Anna got the email first. It was from a community activism group Marianne sometimes partnered with, called Healing Homes. Subject line, workshop leader. Announcement, Marianne Evans. Description, reclaiming space in patriarchal kitchens, a case study in microaggressions and domestic control. Guess what the case study was? Anna turned her laptop toward me without a word. The flyer had an image of a man's silhouette, arms crossed, with a fridge behind him. Caption, when organization becomes oppression. I laughed, like full-on hysterical laughing. That sort of laugh where your brain just short-circuits from disbelief. Anna didn't. She said, "Jake, this is getting out of control." I agreed. But what do you even do when your mother-in-law is holding seminars where you're the villain? And it wasn't just theory anymore. At that point, random people in our building started giving me side eyes in the elevator. One neighbor said, "Hey man, I saw that fridge video. Rough look." But I didn't really snap until that Sunday. I went to the community center to grab Anna's donation box, just a quick errand. But when I walked in, the front table had a display of pamphlets, and there it was. Moral humiliation in the modern household. My name wasn't on it, but my face? Oh, it was a sketch, an uncanny sketch. The woman behind the table smiled at me and said, "Are you here for the talk? We love Marianne. So brave." I dropped the box. Just dropped it. Shook my head and walked straight out. I got in the car and just sat there gripping the steering wheel like it might punch me next. Then I started the engine and drove. Not home, just away. I didn't have a plan, just this electric buzz of fury and disbelief humming under my skin. I stopped at a gas station 2 towns over, grabbed a terrible coffee, and opened my phone. The comments on the TikTok were still climbing. People were now remixing the audio with clips from Get Out and The Handmaid's Tale. Some influencer made a how to spot fridge-based sexism guide. I even saw someone in the replies say, "Men like this are why I have lockable pantry cabinets." I sat there scrolling until my thumb went numb. Then my phone buzzed. It was Anna, Just 3 words. We need to talk. Update number 1. Okay, so, wow. First off, thank you to everyone who commented, messaged, even the ones who called me Fridge Bro and told me to consider therapy. Honestly, fair. I wasn't expecting my inbox to fill with everything from I stand with Jake memes to someone offering me a place to crash in case the moral humiliation escalates into spiritual warfare. One person even DM'd me a photo of their fridge organized by love languages. I don't know what that means, but I respect the commitment. Anyway, I didn't respond to most messages because things kind of blew up on my end. Remember how I left off with Anna texting, "We need to talk"? Yeah, that wasn't a casual vibe check. That was a full sit-down conversation in our living room. Lights off, tea cooling untouched, Marianne in the guest room playing ambient wail. Sounds like she was at peace while our marriage was quietly detonating in real time. Anna was trying, really trying, not to take sides. But I could see it in her face. She was tired. Tired of the fridge labels, the podcast drama, the viral TikToks, the way our friends were now sending her screenshots and asking if she was okay. Someone even reached out to her boss anonymously to share the clip. Like this was starting to bleed into real life. And she said it, plain and soft. "Jake, I know you meant well, but this is hurting people now." I wanted to scream. Hurt who? Over eggs and shelf space? But I just nodded, said nothing. Let the silence sit there like spoiled milk. Then came the worst part. She asked if we could take a little space. Not break up, not separate. Just, she wanted to stay with her sister for a few days. To clear her head. I told her I understood, but I didn't. I still don't. She left that night with an overnight bag and a tired kiss on the cheek. I stood at the window and watched her Uber pull away while Marianne sat in the guest room humming like a Gregorian monk. The next morning, Marianne came into the kitchen and said, "I'm glad Anna's taking time to reevaluate her emotional environment. This house needed a reset." I didn't respond, just stood there staring at the cold patriarchy note still stuck to the freezer. So that's where we are. Anna's gone. Marianne's still here. And the fridge? Still a goddamn battleground. But I'm not going down easy. I've got my own plan now. I'm done playing defense. All right, if you've made it this far, buckle in, because this is where the vibes shift from awkward family comedy to accidental viral vengeance. So after Anna left, it was just me and Marianne in the house. And let me tell you, that woman strutted around like she'd won. Like this was her house now. She made self-love smoothies at 5 a.m., loudly, started wearing a velvet kimono, and replaced our hallway art with printed quotes from her podcast episodes. Literal quotes of herself. I wish I was joking. The kicker? She started hosting healing salons in our living room. Not kidding. Little gatherings of local women, mostly people she met through the TikTok virality, where they sat on cushions, lit Palo Santo, and discussed domestic trauma as experienced through masculine proximity. There were name tags. There was a talking spoon. One woman brought a full vision board titled "Dismantling Kitchen Tyranny." And through it all, she'd glance at me. This smug, knowing little look. Like she was daring me to say something. So I did. But not with words. Not right away. First, I waited until one of her salons was scheduled. A Saturday afternoon, 10 guests expected. Anna still at her sister's. The perfect storm. That morning, I rearranged the fridge. Like full-on Marie Kondo level. I took out every item, cleaned every shelf, labeled everything meticulously. But the labels? Oh, I went there. Her goat kefir, elixir of superiority, the sea moss, pretentious jello, her pressed tofu labeled oppression-free protein. I changed it to flavored insolence. My leftover lasagna, male tears. But the best part? I installed a tiny camera, hidden in the fridge door. Don't worry, nothing illegal. Just a basic motion-detecting GoPro that captured the moment she opened it that afternoon. "Y'all!" she screamed. Not like horror movie scream, more like a shriek of existential betrayal. Then dead silence. For like 10 seconds, she just stood there, hand on the fridge, mouth wide open. Then, softly, he labeled my kefir. A minute later, I heard the stampede. 10 sandal-clad activists storming toward the fridge to witness the blasphemy. Gasps, audible gasping. Then Marianne shouted, "This was a sanctuary. This man has defiled the emotional geometry of our nutritional safe zone." At that point, I casually walked in, GoPro in hand, and said, "You know, Marianne, for someone so against control, you sure love policing shelf space." She turned beet red. One of her friends dropped their celery juice. The silence was delicious. But it gets better. I uploaded the footage to my own account. No rant, no explanation. Just titled it, "When Your Mother-in-Law Holds Workshops About Your Fridge." It blew. Upper. People loved it. Someone put dramatic music over it. Another stitched in Marianne's original podcast quote about spatial dominance next to her fridge freakout. The comments were relentless. And that's when she cracked. That night, she packed her stuff. No goodbye, no manifesto, just rage packing in the guest room, slamming my pantry doors like they owed her money. She left a note on the counter that said, "You've turned satire into sabotage. I hope your eggs always freeze and your sauces curdle." Weird curse, but okay. Anna came home 2 days later. She'd seen the video. And she had thoughts. So Anna walks through the front door, no suitcase, no dramatic music. Just a quiet, tired, "Hey." She sets her keys down, looks around like she's checking if the house is still standing, then heads straight to the fridge. She opens it, stares, then turns around and says, "You labeled her kefir as elixir of superiority?" I nod, bracing for the scolding. But she laughs. Like really laughs. Covers her mouth, double over kind of laugh. She sinks into a chair and mutters, "Oh my God, that's so stupid. It's perfect." Y'all, I just stared at her. I didn't know whether to laugh too or cry from sheer relief. It felt like the first real moment between us in weeks. She admitted she'd seen the video, and the memes, and the remixes. Fridge control to Major Mom is her favorite, by the way. She said part of her was mortified, because yes, that was still her mom melting down in front of the crisper drawer. But another part? She was proud, not of the drama, but of me. "Honestly," she said, "you finally stood up to her. I've been avoiding it for years." That part hit me hard. Because yeah, this whole saga wasn't just about tofu and shelf labels. It was about how Anna grew up being emotionally steamrolled, guilt-tripped, and manipulated. Taught to keep the peace at all costs, even if it meant letting someone else control your space, your time, your voice. She told me something I didn't expect. Marianne used to do this exact thing with her dad. Not the fridge specifically, but the same relentless undermining dressed up as empowerment. She called it domestic correction. He called it losing arguments in his own house. Anna thought she'd escaped that dynamic, but she hadn't. She'd just replaced the battleground with a nicer apartment and hoped for the best. And me? I was collateral damage. The guy who thought, "Hey, want me to move the eggs?" was a polite offer, not a psychological landmine. We talked for hours. Not even just about her mom, but about us. How we'd both been walking on eggshells, pun very much intended, trying not to upset each other, when what we needed was to blow the whole damn thing open. Then she asked if I'd seen the latest twist. What twist? She pulled up her phone and showed me. Marianne went live. She'd recorded a follow-up stream titled "Refrigerator Repression and the Culture of Male Retaliation." But this time, the comments weren't cheering her on. People were calling her out, saying she'd gone too far. That weaponizing feminist theory to bully your daughter's husband was not empowerment. It was just garden-variety narcissism with a faux woke twist. One comment stuck with me. "You don't get to call it liberation if you're the one holding the leash." And that's when it hit me. I didn't need to fight back anymore. Because the truth had already thawed through the ice. Update number 2. Okay, so this is going to sound fake, but I swear on every mislabeled condiment in my fridge, it's real. She called me. Marianne. 2 weeks after she packed up her crystal-infused granola and rage-marched out of our house, she called. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I stared at the screen like it was going to explode. Anna was beside me mouthing, "Don't answer." But I did. Because I'm either brave or stupid, or both. She opened with, "I want to clarify a few things." No hello, no apology. Just clarify. I said, "Okay." She went on this long, meandering explanation about how the workshop was never meant to be personal, and how the podcast was edited for engagement, and how she never expected things to spiral into a cultural flashpoint. I said nothing. Then, finally, she said it. I think I may have overreached. I nearly dropped the phone. She didn't say sorry, not directly, But that was as close as Marianne gets to repentance. And then came the real twist. I've decided to step back from public discourse for a while. Let things cool down. Y'all, she's logging off. The woman who turned my fridge into a socio-political war zone is voluntarily stepping out of the spotlight. Why? Because, her words, the discourse has become polluted by performative reactionaries. Translation: she got ratioed into submission. But here's the kicker. Right before she hung up, she said, "Also, tell Anna I saw the TikTok where you called the freezer male tears. That was actually pretty clever." Then she hung up. I turned to Anna. We both sat there in stunned silence. Then, slowly, she grinned. And we laughed. We laughed for like 5 full minutes straight. Not because it was funny, but because somehow we'd survived. Marianne hasn't spoken to either of us since. She's still off social media. The fridge is calm now, peaceful, just cold and quiet and blessedly boring. Anna and I, we're better. Like actually better. Talking more, laughing more, cooking together again. She labeled the hummus woke paste the other day. I love that woman. So yeah, that's the end of it, I guess. The Great Fridge War of 2025. We lost our cool, but we found each other. And the milk finally stays on the correct shelf. Thanks for following this absurd, unexpected journey. Hug your fridge. Apologize to your condiments. And if your mother-in-law starts using the word microaggression in the kitchen, run. It's been a month. A whole month without fridge labels, podcast callouts, or surprise workshops on the politics of shelf space. No Palo Santo smoke drifting into my cereal. No sea moss fermenting under judgmental stares. Just peace. But peace feels weird when you've been living in a Cold War. Anna and I have been rebuilding. Quietly. It's not just about the fridge, obviously. That was just the battleground. The real war was about control, voice, and what happens when a family lets one person monopolize the moral high ground. The crazy part? We actually sat down and talked about everything Marianne didn't say on that live stream. Like how she used to rearrange Anna's dolls when she was a kid and call it emotional patterning. How she once threw out Anna's diary because it was too self-referential. How Anna spent years trying to contort herself into someone her mother would approve of, until she realized even contortionists break. And me? I've started drawing boundaries like my life depends on it. Because it kind of does. I've told Anna, no more, just let her stay a few days when Marianne needs a place to crash. No more peacekeeping at the cost of our sanity. If she ever needs space again, she can take it, but not as an escape, as a choice. And here's the unexpected part. I actually missed the fight. Not the drama, but the aliveness of it. Because for the first time, we weren't sleepwalking through our dynamic. We were awake. We were choosing. The fridge still holds ghosts. Every time I open it, I think of Marianne shrieking about oppression and fermented chickpeas. But there's also something new in there now. A magnet with a dumb meme Anna printed. Every time a man moves the oat milk, a feminist gets her wings. We're healing. Last week, Anna suggested we host a dinner party. Just a few close friends. She made lasagna, I made margaritas. And we both stood in the kitchen, laughing as our guests helped themselves to the fridge. Unlabeled, uncurated, free. Marianne hasn't contacted us since that last call. No updates. No passive-aggressive emails. No sudden drop-ins. But if she does, there's a new magnet waiting for her. It says, "This fridge is a patriarchy-free zone, but we still control the thermostat." Thanks for sticking with me through this absolutely ridiculous, weirdly healing saga. I may have lost the fridge for a minute, but I got my wife back. And honestly, that's the only shelf I care about.